I want to tell you something that might upset a lot of spiritual teachers, but I've been gone long enough that I don't care anymore about being polite. The truth is, most people are making manifestation far too complicated, and that complication is exactly what's keeping their desires trapped in the invisible realm, never breaking through into reality. You see, darling, I spent my entire life watching people tie themselves into mental knots, trying to visualize perfectly, trying to feel every single emotion with precision, trying to control every thought like some sort of spiritual dictator ruling over their own mind. And yes, some of them got results eventually. But most of them? Most of them just got exhausted. Here's what I discovered that changed everything, and it's the exact reason my students saw results in days while others waited months or years. There's a quantum shortcut that almost everyone misses because it seems too simple, too easy, too good to be true. And that shortcut is this. Your subconscious mind doesn't respond to effort, it responds to conviction. Not visualization, not emotion, not repetition. Conviction. Let me be crystal clear about what I mean. When I say conviction, I'm not talking about believing really, really hard. I'm not talking about forcing yourself to feel certain. I'm talking about that quiet, unshakable knowing you have when you mail a letter and you just know it will arrive. You don't visualize the postal worker carrying it. You don't repeat affirmations about the mail system. You don't sit in meditation feeling the emotions of the letter arriving. You simply drop it in the mailbox and go about your day with complete certainty that the system will handle it. That's the quantum shortcut. That's what makes my approach faster than methods that require you to hold a mental state for 30 days straight or build up tremendous feeling over weeks of practice. Your word is your wand, but only when you speak it with the same casual certainty you have about gravity working or the sun rising tomorrow. Now, I know what you're thinking because I heard it 1,000 times when I was teaching in New York City all those years ago. You're thinking, but Florence, how can I have conviction about something I can't see yet? How can I be certain about money coming when my bank account is empty? How can I know my perfect relationship is mine when I'm sitting here alone? And that's exactly where everyone gets stuck, my dear. That's the trap. The trap is believing that your current circumstances are showing you the truth about what's possible. They're not. They're only showing you what you've been thinking up until this very moment. You see, most people look at their empty bank account and say, well, there's the proof. I don't have money. But what they don't understand is that the empty bank account is the old news. It's last month's thinking made visible. It's yesterday's doubts crystallized into form. Your bank balance right now? That's ancient history. It's the result of thoughts you were thinking weeks ago, maybe months ago. So why on earth would you use it as evidence for what's coming next? That would be like looking at yesterday's newspaper and expecting to find tomorrow's headlines. It makes no sense. Yet we do it constantly. We use the old conditions to predict the new conditions, and then we wonder why nothing ever changes. We stay stuck in the same loop, recycling the same evidence, arriving at the same conclusions. Here's what you must grasp. The physical world is always the last to know. Always. By the time something shows up in your experience, it's already old. The real action, the real creation, happens in the invisible first. Think of a seed planted in dark soil. For weeks, nothing. A person looking at that dirt might say, see, nothing's happening. This is proof that nothing will grow. But beneath the surface, everything is happening. Roots are forming. Life is organizing itself. The invisible work is being done. And then one day, breakthrough. The sprout appears. But did the creation happen that day? No. It happened in the darkness, in the waiting, in the period when there was no evidence at all. This is how your life works. This is how manifestation works. The evidence comes last, not first. The proof arrives after the belief, not before it. So when you say you need proof before you can believe, you've got the whole thing backward. You're asking the universe to break its own laws for you. You're saying, show me first, then I'll believe. But the universe only responds to, I believe, therefore show me. And I know what you're thinking, but I tried that once and it didn't work. Let me tell you something. You didn't really try it. What you did was, you spoke some words, while your whole being vibrated with doubt. You said the affirmation with your lips, while your heart whispered, this is ridiculous. You declared abundance, while mentally calculating all the ways you were going broke. That's not faith. That's just noise. Real faith feels different. It's quiet. It's settled. When you have real faith, you don't need to convince anyone, not even yourself. You simply know, the way you know your own name. The way you know the sun will rise tomorrow. You don't wake up every morning checking to see if your name is still real, do you? You don't stand outside at dawn holding your breath, hoping the sun might show up this time. You just know. That's the kind of faith that moves mountains. That's the kind of faith that rearranges your entire world. Now, here's where people get tripped up. They think faith means sitting around doing nothing, just believing and waiting for some miracle to drop out of the sky. No, no, no. Faith without action is like a car without gas. It looks pretty, but it's not going anywhere. When you have real faith, you're moved to action. But it's not frantic action. It's not you running around trying to force things to happen, manipulating circumstances, pushing and controlling. That's fear disguised as productivity. Real faith leads you to inspired action. Action that feels light, that feels right, that flows. You get an impulse to call someone. You get an idea to take a different route home. You suddenly remember something you forgot to do. These aren't random thoughts. This is the universe responding to your faith, showing you the next step. But you have to take it. You have to follow the guidance. I've seen it happen 1,000 times. Someone declares they're ready for their perfect opportunity. Within days, they run into an old friend who mentions a job opening. But they don't call. Why? Because it wasn't dramatic enough. It wasn't mystical enough. They were waiting for angels to appear and hand them a contract written in gold. The universe doesn't need to be theatrical. It just needs to be effective. And effectiveness, my friends, often looks remarkably ordinary. I once worked with a woman who was visualizing her ideal home. She spent months perfecting the vision: white picket fence, bay windows, a garden with roses. She could smell those roses in her meditation. She knew exactly how many steps led to the front door. Then one day, her landlord told her the building was being sold. She had 30 days to move. She panicked, called me in tears. "Florence, the universe is punishing me. I'm being forced out," I said. "Or perhaps you're being moved out." Within a week, through a casual conversation at the grocery store, she learned about a house for rent in a neighborhood she'd never considered. She almost didn't look at it. It wasn't in her perfect location, but something nudged her to see it anyway. That house had everything she'd visualized. Everything. Except it came through a forced move and a chance conversation about laundry detergent, not through a mystical revelation. This is what I mean by recognizing your answered prayer. The package doesn't always match the wrapping paper you imagined. You say you want abundance, then you judge how it arrives. "Oh, that job is beneath me. That opportunity seems too simple. That person couldn't possibly be the right connection." Do you see what you're doing? You're standing at the door, refusing to accept the delivery because you don't like the uniform the courier is wearing. The universe has no ego about how it delivers your good. It will use whatever channel is open, whatever path offers the least resistance. Sometimes that path runs through uncomfortable territory. I've watched people pray for courage, then complain when they're faced with a situation that requires bravery. They wanted courage delivered like a vitamin they could swallow, not as an actual challenge to overcome. The universe doesn't work that way. It's not Amazon Prime for spiritual qualities. You don't order patience and have it show up in 2 days, fully formed and ready to use. You order patience, and suddenly every slow line, every delayed result, every person who takes forever to make a point becomes your training ground. I remember a woman who came to me desperate for a financial breakthrough. She'd been affirming abundance for months, doing everything right according to the books she'd read. But instead of money flowing in, she kept encountering situations that required her to let go of money. A friend needed help. An unexpected repair came up. An opportunity to invest in herself appeared. She was furious. "I asked for abundance, not more expenses," she told me, near tears. But here's what she couldn't see yet. The universe was clearing her of the poverty consciousness that had been blocking her abundance all along. Every time she gave freely, every time she paid without resentment, every time she invested with faith rather than fear, she was reprogramming decades of scarcity thinking. The money she wanted couldn't come through the narrow, fearful channel she'd been operating from. That channel had to be widened first. 6 months later, she received an inheritance she didn't even know was coming. But more importantly, by then she'd become a different person. Someone who could receive without guilt, hold without anxiety, and give without feeling depleted. The money came once she was ready to steward it rather than just cling to it. This is the genius of unanswered prayer that people miss. What looks like denial is often preparation. What feels like delay is actually development. The universe isn't withholding your good, it's building your capacity to handle it. I've seen this with relationships too. Someone prays for their soulmate, and instead of meeting them, they keep encountering people who trigger their unresolved wounds. Why do I keep attracting the wrong people? They ask. Because you're not attracting the wrong people, you're attracting your curriculum. Each difficult person is showing you exactly where you need to heal before the right person can show up. Think of it like preparing a home for a guest. You wouldn't invite someone to stay in a house filled with clutter, broken furniture, and leaking pipes, would you? Yet that's exactly what we do with our hearts. We keep rooms locked that are filled with resentment from past relationships. We leave broken beliefs scattered around beliefs that we're not enough, that love always leaves, that we have to earn affection, and then we wonder why the love that shows up doesn't feel safe or stable. The universe is far too kind to send you your ideal partner when your inner house is in disarray. Not as punishment, but as protection. Because imagine meeting your soulmate while you're still carrying the wounds that would push them away. You'd sabotage it, you'd test them until they failed. You'd recreate the very pain you're trying to escape. I've watched it happen again and again. A woman meets a genuinely kind man, but because her father was distant, she doesn't trust kindness. She reads it as weakness or dishonesty. She pushes and prods, looking for the betrayal she's certain is coming. And eventually, exhausted by her suspicion, he leaves not because he was wrong for her, but because she wasn't ready for him. This is why your preparation period isn't wasted time. Every moment you spend healing, you're becoming someone who can receive what you've been asking for. You're clearing out the patterns that would destroy the very thing you desire. And here's what they don't tell you about this preparation phase. It's not always gentle. Sometimes the universe will strip away everything that isn't serving you with what feels like brutal efficiency. That job that gave you just enough money to stay comfortable but kept you miserable? Gone. That friendship that felt safe but kept you small? It fades. That relationship you kept trying to resurrect? The door finally, completely closes. You might call it bad luck. I call it divine intervention. The universe is making space. You can't fill a cup that's already full of stagnant water. Sometimes life has to tip you over completely to empty you out for what's coming. And here's the thing most people miss. When you're being emptied out, it feels like loss. It feels like punishment. But it's preparation. The universe isn't taking from you, it's upgrading your capacity. Think about it. You wouldn't pour premium fuel into a corroded tank, would you? You wouldn't plant a garden in soil that's toxic and depleted. The clearing out, the pruning, the painful removal of what once felt comfortable, this is the universe preparing you for a higher grade of blessing. I've watched this happen so many times. Someone loses the relationship they thought was their soulmate. And 6 months later, they meet someone who actually sees them, really sees them, in ways they didn't even know they needed. Someone gets laid off from the job they clung to out of fear, and suddenly they're free to pursue the calling they'd buried under excuses and obligations. The emptying feels violent because we're so attached to our contents. We define ourselves by what we're holding, the relationships, the titles, the routines, the identities we've constructed. When those things get stripped away, we panic because we think we're being erased. But you're not being erased. You're being revealed. All that stuff you were carrying, most of it wasn't even yours. It was handed to you by family patterns, social conditioning, old fears, borrowed dreams that never fit right. You were walking around weighted down by expectations that had nothing to do with your actual purpose. And the universe, in its infinite intelligence, knows this. It knows you can't step into your true power while dragging all that dead weight. So it creates the circumstances that force you to let go. Not because you're being punished, but because you're being promoted, and the old stuff simply can't come with you to the new level. This is why the moment before the breakthrough often looks like a breakdown. This is why people say everything fell apart right before it all came together. Because the falling apart wasn't random, it was required. It was the demolition before the reconstruction. You can't renovate a house while keeping all the old rotted beams in place. At some point, you have to gut it, and standing in an empty, torn-up room feels terrifying when you can't yet see the blueprint for what's being built. But the master builder, the universe, it's already seen the finished product. It's already measured twice. It knows exactly what it's doing, even when you're standing there in the dust and debris thinking everything's ruined. So when you're in that empty space, when everything familiar has been removed, and you feel like you're floating in a void, don't rush to fill it back up with the first thing that feels comfortable. Don't panic and grab for what used to work. Don't try to reconstruct the old thing just because the silence is uncomfortable. That empty space, that's holy ground. That's where the new thing is being built, and you can't see it yet because it's being constructed in the invisible first. I've watched people do this over and over. They get fired from a job that was draining their soul, and before they've even processed what happened, they're frantically applying to the same type of position at a similar company. They end up in the exact same situation with a different logo. Or they end up in a relationship that wasn't serving them, finally get free, and within weeks they're dating someone with the same patterns, the same wounds, the same way of making them feel small. They filled the empty space too quickly. See, the universe gives you void space for a reason. It's not punishment, it's preparation. It's the pause between the old song ending and the new one beginning. And if you keep humming the old tune in that pause, you'll never hear what's trying to come through. This is what I mean by trusting the carpenter. The carpenter isn't afraid of empty space. The carpenter knows that before you can install the new cabinets, you have to remove the old ones. Before you can lay new flooring, you have to tear up what's worn out. There's always a phase where the room looks worse than it did when you started. There's dust everywhere, exposed wires, holes in the walls. Your logical mind is screaming, "This is a disaster. We should have left it alone." But the carpenter isn't worried. The carpenter has seen this 1,000 times. This mess is part of the process. This chaos is necessary. And right on schedule, right when it's supposed to happen, the new structure starts to take shape. The new cabinets go in. The new floor gets laid. Fresh paint covers the walls. And suddenly, you're standing in a room that's better than anything you could have imagined when you were clinging to the old version. Your life works the same way. The intelligence that's renovating your life isn't concerned with your comfort during the construction phase. It's concerned with the final result. And sometimes that means everything has to come down before anything can go up. And here's what most spiritual teachings won't tell you. The darkness you're experiencing isn't happening to you. It's happening for you. Every sleepless night, every anxiety spiral, every moment you felt like you're losing your grip, these aren't punishments, they're excavations. The universe is digging through layers of false beliefs you didn't even know you were carrying. I remember a woman who came to me, desperate. She'd lost her job, her relationship had ended, and she'd had to move back in with her parents at 37. "Everything I built is gone," she said. "I must have done something terribly wrong." But here's what I saw. She hadn't done anything wrong. She'd been living someone else's version of success. The job she lost? She hated it but stayed because it looked impressive. The relationship? She'd been performing the role of perfect girlfriend while her real self suffocated. The apartment? A financial stretch to maintain an image. What looked like loss was actually liberation wearing a disguise. The universe wasn't punishing her. It was answering the prayer she'd been whispering in her sleep, the one her conscious mind was too afraid to speak out loud. "Free me from this life that doesn't fit." And that's the terrifying beauty of the dark night. It responds to your deepest truth, not your surface desires. You might think you want the promotion, the relationship status, the achievement, but your soul knows better. Your soul knows what you actually need to become who you're meant to be. The darkness strips away what's false. And yes, sometimes you've built your entire life on false foundations. Sometimes your whole identity is constructed from other people's expectations and childhood programming and fear-based decisions. So when the light comes to do its real work, it has to first show you what you're actually standing on. This is why positive thinking fails during these times. You can't affirm your way out of an earthquake. You can't visualize yourself into stability when the ground itself is being restructured. The old tools don't work because they were designed for a different phase of growth. And here's what I want you to understand. This transition period, this uncomfortable middle space, is not a sign that you've failed. It's not evidence that the universe has abandoned you or that your faith wasn't strong enough. It's actually the opposite. You're being upgraded. And upgrades are messy. Think about when you update the software on your phone. For those few minutes, nothing works. You can't make calls, you can't send messages, you can't access your apps. The screen might go black. You might wonder if you've broken everything. But that temporary shutdown is necessary for the new system to install. The old framework has to be dismantled before the new one can function. Your consciousness is undergoing the same process right now. The old operating system, the one built on striving and proving and forcing, is being replaced with something far more sophisticated. But during the installation, you feel like nothing is working. Your prayers feel empty, your affirmations feel hollow. Your usual clarity is clouded. This is not regression, this is recalibration. I remember going through this myself, years ago. I had built my entire spiritual practice on certain principles, certain techniques. They had worked beautifully for so long. I knew exactly how to shift my consciousness, exactly which statements would change my mental atmosphere. And then suddenly, nothing. It was like standing in front of a door I'd walked through 1,000 times, only to find it locked from the inside. I panicked. I thought I'd lost my connection. I thought I'd done something wrong, fallen out of alignment, broken some cosmic rule I wasn't aware of. I doubled down on the old methods. I affirmed harder. I visualized more intensely. I treated my spiritual practice like a broken machine that just needed the right hit in the right place to start working again. But that's not what was happening. I wasn't broken. I was being broken open. There's a difference. The universe wasn't withholding from me. It was preparing me for a completely different level of manifestation. The old methods worked for the old consciousness, but the new level I was being called into required a new approach entirely. And I had to let myself be confused. I had to let myself not know. I had to surrender the identity of being someone who had all the spiritual answers, who could metaphysically manipulate every situation into alignment. I had to become willing to be the student again, instead of always the teacher. And you know what happened in that space of not knowing? In that vulnerable, humbling space where I couldn't force or fix or figure it out? Grace found me. Not because I affirmed it into being, but because I finally got out of the way. The relationship I thought I had to manifest? It ended. And 6 months later, I met someone I never would have asked for because I didn't even know that kind of partnership was possible. The career breakthrough came, but through a door I had completely overlooked because I was so busy trying to kick down the one I thought was meant for me. This is what I mean when I say the law of attraction isn't the whole truth. The whole truth includes surrender. It includes mystery. It includes the humbling recognition that your conscious mind, no matter how trained in metaphysical principles, cannot possibly orchestrate the intricate perfection of divine timing. Your soul has an agenda your ego knows nothing about. Let me say that again because it's crucial. Your soul has an agenda your ego knows nothing about. Your ego wants the promotion, the recognition, the relationship, the bank account. And those things aren't bad. But your soul wants expansion, growth, the shedding of old identities, the deepening of your capacity to love, to trust, to be with what is. And sometimes, oftentimes, what your soul needs requires you to not get what your ego wants. At least not yet. At least not in the form you've been demanding. I've watched people in my community manifest their dream job only to have it fall apart within months because it forced them to finally confront their worthiness issues. I've seen women call in their soulmate and then face the terror of actual intimacy, the vulnerability of being truly seen. The universe didn't fail them. The manifestation was the beginning of the lesson, not the end. We think manifestation is about arrival. It's actually about initiation. Every single thing you call into your life is a doorway into deeper self-knowledge. And sometimes the greatest gift the universe can give you is not what you asked for, but what you actually need to become who you're meant to be. This doesn't mean you stop setting intentions. It doesn't mean you abandon your desires or stop believing in your power to co-create. It means you hold your desires lightly enough that they don't hold you. You declare what you want with clarity and conviction, yes, but you also stay open to the 1,000 different ways the universe might deliver something even better. You stop strangling your dreams with the death grip of control and instead let them breathe, let them evolve, let them surprise you. I've watched people manifest extraordinary things the moment they stopped micromanaging the how. The woman who wanted to meet her soulmate but kept insisting he had to look a certain way, work a certain job, drive a certain car. She met him the week she let go of her ridiculous checklist and opened her heart to someone who embodied the feeling she actually wanted: safety, laughter, deep respect. He looked nothing like what she'd imagined, and he was everything she needed. The man who wanted financial freedom, but was so attached to it arriving through his current business that he couldn't see the door opening right next to him. A conversation at a coffee shop. An offhand remark that led to an introduction that changed everything. But he almost missed it because he was so busy trying to force the wrong door open. This is the spiritual maturity nobody talks about, the ability to want something deeply without needing it to arrive exactly as you've scripted it. To trust that your soul knows things your ego doesn't. To understand that sometimes the universe is rerouting you not to deny you, but to position you for something your limited human perspective couldn't even imagine yet. You think you're being punished when really you're being redirected. You think you're being denied when actually you're being refined. The closed door isn't rejection, it's protection. It's the universe saying, "Not that way, not yet. Trust me on this." Because here's what I know for certain. When one door closes, another opens. But we spend so much time staring at the closed door, mourning what we've lost, that we miss the new door that's already swinging wide open. We're so attached to how we thought it should happen that we can't see how it's actually happening. I've watched this pattern repeat itself endlessly. Someone loses a job they were desperately clinging to, only to find their true calling was waiting in the unemployment line. A relationship ends that they thought was forever, and 6 months later they meet someone who shows them what real love actually feels like. They get rejected from the school they had their heart set on, then thrive somewhere else they never would have considered. The universe is always conspiring in your favor, even when it feels like everything's falling apart, especially when it feels like everything's falling apart. Because sometimes things have to fall apart so they can fall together in a better way. You see, your good is trying to reach you, but it can't get through if you're holding on to what no longer serves you. You're clutching on to relationships that drain you, jobs that diminish you, patterns that harm you, all because you're afraid of the empty space. But nature abhors a vacuum. When you release what's wrong, what's right rushes in to fill the space. This is why surrender is so powerful. Not giving up, surrendering. There's a difference. Giving up is passive, defeated, hopeless. Surrendering is active, intentional, powerful. It's saying, "I've done my part, now I trust the universe to do its part. I'm releasing my grip on how this has to look so I can receive how it's meant to be." And here's the wild part. The moment you truly surrender, things start to shift. Not because you've stopped caring, but because you've stopped blocking. Your anxiety was actually interference. Your forcing was creating resistance. When you step back and let divine order take over, everything flows. I'm not saying sit around and do nothing. You've got to do your part. Plant your seeds, water them, tend your garden, but you don't dig them up every day to check if they're growing. You trust the process. That's the faith that moves mountains. That's the knowing that changes everything. I remember a woman who came to me, desperate to sell her home. She'd been trying for months. Nothing was working. The market was slow. Her agent was discouraged. And every day that house sat empty was draining her finances and her hope. I asked her a simple question. "Can you see it sold?" She hesitated. "I'm trying to." "That's your problem," I told her. "You're trying. Trying implies effort and struggle. Can you simply know it's sold? Can you treat it as done?" She looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. But something in her shifted. She went home that night and spoke to that house like it was already celebrating its new owners. She thanked it for the perfect sale. She blessed the family who was already on their way. She stopped checking the listing every hour. She stopped complaining to her friends about how long it was taking. 3 days later, she got an offer. Full price, cash buyer, closed in 2 weeks. Now, did the universe suddenly decide to reward her? Did some cosmic force take pity on her desperation and throw her a bone? No. She changed the frequency she was broadcasting. She stopped being a woman with a house she couldn't sell and became a woman whose house was already sold. The universe simply matched the signal she was sending out. This is what most people don't understand about manifesting. They think it's about working harder, pushing more, forcing outcomes. They think if they just visualize long enough or affirm loud enough, they can override reality. But you cannot override reality. You can only align with a different version of it. There are infinite realities existing right now, parallel to this one. In one reality, you're struggling. In another, you're thriving. In one, you're sick. In another, you're radiantly healthy. In one, you're alone. In another, you're deeply loved. The question isn't which reality is real. They're all real. The question is, which one are you tuning into? Your thoughts, your words, your feelings, these are your tuning mechanism. You're either dialing into lack or abundance, sickness or health, loneliness or love. And here's what makes this so powerful. You don't have to create anything. It's already there. You just have to match its frequency. Think of it like tuning a radio. The music is already playing Mozart's symphony, that jazz station. The news, it's all broadcasting right now. But if your dial is set to static, you're not going to hear it. You wouldn't say the music doesn't exist just because you can't hear it, would you? You'd adjust your dial. Your consciousness is that dial. When I was learning this truth, I worked with a woman who wanted to sell her house. She'd had it on the market for months. Nothing. She came to me, frantic, desperate, telling me all the reasons why it wouldn't sell: the economy, the neighborhood, the crack in the basement wall. I stopped her right there. You're tuned to the frequency of houses that don't sell, I said. Every word out of your mouth is confirming that reality. I had her do something that seemed absurd to her rational mind. I told her to thank God that her house was already sold, not will be sold someday. Already sold. To speak as if the perfect buyer had already signed the papers, even though there wasn't a single showing scheduled. She looked at me like I'd lost my mind, but she was desperate enough to try it. For 2 weeks, she walked through that house thanking God for the sale. She packed her belongings with joy, already seeing herself in her new home. She spoke about when I move instead of if I move. 3 days later, a buyer appeared out of nowhere. Full asking price. No negotiation. Magic? No. She simply changed her frequency. She stopped broadcasting the signal of lack and started broadcasting the signal of completion. And the universe, which is always listening, always responding, delivered a perfect match. You see, the universe doesn't argue with you. It doesn't say, well, actually, you're wrong about that. It simply says, yes. This is what you're claiming as true, so this is what I'll show you. It's the most neutral, most responsive force in existence. This is why affirmations work, not because they create something new, but because they retune your consciousness. When you declare, I am prospered, blessed, and successful, you're not lying to yourself. You're aligning with a frequency that already exists in the invisible realm. You're claiming your inheritance. The moment you speak it, something shifts in the unseen world. Your words become creative agents. They move into the quantum field of infinite possibilities and begin arranging circumstances, people, and opportunities to match your declaration. I once knew a woman who was drowning in debt. Every bill was a reminder of her failure. Every phone call from a creditor sent her into panic. She lived in constant fear, constantly affirming her lack. I'm so broke, I'll never get ahead. Money just slips through my fingers. And the universe said, yes, as you have spoken, so shall it be. Then she discovered this law. She began, trembling at first, to speak differently. Money flows to me easily and constantly. It felt absurd saying it while holding a stack of overdue notices, but she persisted. Within 3 weeks, an old friend contacted her about a business opportunity. Within 2 months, she received an unexpected tax refund she'd forgotten about. Within 6 months, she had tripled her income and was paying off debt faster than she'd imagined possible. Magic? No. Law. Immutable, reliable, scientific law. Your word is your wand. Every time you speak, you cast a spell. The question is, are you cursing yourself or blessing yourself? Most people are unknowingly casting curses all day long. I'm so tired. This weather is depressing. I always get sick this time of year. I can never afford that. People always let me down. These aren't harmless observations. These are commands to your subconscious mind and declarations to the universe about what you expect to receive. You must become vigilant. Guard your tongue, as if your life depends on it, because it does. Your quality of life is directly proportional to the quality of your speech. Start noticing your habitual phrases. What do you say when someone asks how you're doing? What do you declare about your finances, your health, your relationships? Are you affirming what you want or what you fear? This is why I am so insistent on monitoring your speech. Because every time you say, "I can't afford this," you are setting a spiritual law in motion. Every time you say, "I never get what I want," you are creating that reality. Every time you declare, "I'm so unlucky," you are building a wall between yourself and your good. Your words are not passive observations. They are active commands to the universe. They are declarations of law. They are creative forces that shape and mold your entire experience. I once knew a woman who would say constantly, "I'm always so tired." From morning until night, this was her refrain. "I'm exhausted. I'm worn out. I have no energy." And she wondered why she dragged herself through each day like she was carrying the weight of the world. I finally said to her, "Stop claiming tiredness as your identity. Stop announcing your fatigue to everyone you meet. Stop reinforcing this condition with your words." She protested. "But I am tired. I'm just telling the truth." "No," I said. "You are creating your truth. There is a difference." She began to change her words. Instead of "I'm so tired," she would say, "I am renewed with divine energy." Instead of "I'm exhausted," she affirmed, "Strength flows through me now." It felt false at first. It felt like lying. But within weeks, something shifted. Her energy returned, her vitality increased. The very thing she had been reinforcing with her negative speech began to dissolve when she withdrew her word from it. This is the power you hold. This is the authority you possess. Now, I want you to think about the subtle ways you undermine yourself through speech. It is not always the obvious declarations. Sometimes it is the small, casual comments that slip out unnoticed. "That's just my luck. I knew this would happen. Nothing ever works out for me. I can't catch a break." These seem harmless. They seem like mere observations or expressions of frustration, but they are prophecies. They are instructions to your subconscious mind. They are spiritual contracts that bind you to continued difficulty. You see, the subconscious mind does not understand irony or complaint. It only understands instruction. When you say repeatedly, "I never have enough," your subconscious mind doesn't hear the frustration in your voice. It hears a command. It hears an identity. And it goes to work, making sure that statement remains true in your experience. This is why people who constantly talk about their struggles continue to experience those same struggles year after year. Not because they are cursed, not because the universe is against them, but because they are actively participating in the creation of their own limitation through the power of their spoken word. I knew a woman who was extremely talented in her field. She had gifts that others would have paid dearly to possess, but she had one habit that destroyed every opportunity that came her way. Whenever someone complimented her work, she would immediately say, "Oh, it's nothing special. Anyone could do it." And when opportunities arose, she would tell people, "I'm not really qualified for that. I'm sure there's someone better." She thought she was being humble. She thought she was being realistic, but what she was actually doing was speaking a curse over her own life. She was declaring her own inadequacy with such consistency that her subconscious mind accepted it as truth. And so, despite her obvious talent, she remained stuck in positions far beneath her capability, constantly overlooked, constantly passed over for others with less skill but more confidence in their speech. The turning point came when someone finally confronted her about this pattern. They said, "Every time you speak against yourself, you are building a wall between you and your good. Your words are not humility. They are self-sabotage." At first, she was defensive. She said, "But I don't want to sound arrogant. I don't want to boast. And here is what I want you to understand. There is a vast difference between arrogance and affirmation. arrogance tries to diminish others, to elevate the self. Affirmation simply acknowledges the truth of divine potential without comparison or competition. When you declare, "I am prosperous," you are not bragging about bank accounts or possessions. You are recognizing the infinite source from which all supply flows. You are claiming your divine inheritance, not competing for crumbs from a limited table. I have seen countless individuals hold back from speaking their good because they feared being perceived as proud or presumptuous. They whispered their desires apologetically, as if asking permission from an unwilling universe. But the universe does not withhold we do. Our timidity is not humility. It is a refusal to accept what has already been given. True humility recognizes that the power at work within us is not of our own making. We do not create the laws of the universe, we align with them. The seed does not arrogantly demand to become a tree, it simply follows its divine blueprint. There is no arrogance in a rose blooming to its fullness, in a river flowing to the sea, or in you claiming the abundance that is your spiritual birthright. Let me share with you a practice that bridges affirmation and gratitude, a combination that accelerates manifestation beyond measure. Begin your day by affirming what you desire as though it is already established in the invisible realm. Say with conviction, "My perfect work manifests now. Divine abundance flows to me freely and continuously." Then, before the doubting mind can argue, immediately move into gratitude. I give thanks that this is so. I am grateful for the perfect outworking of this word. This sequence is powerful because affirmation sets the mold, and gratitude confirms the belief. When you give thanks before seeing the physical evidence, you demonstrate faith. You show the universe that you trust the invisible process. Gratitude seals the affirmation with the vibration of already having received. I have witnessed remarkable transformations through this practice. A woman came to me, burdened with debt, barely able to meet her obligations. Together we crafted her affirmation. I am debt-free and financially abundant. But it was when she added genuine thanksgiving, I give thanks for my freedom and prosperity now, that everything shifted. Within weeks, unexpected opportunities appeared. A forgotten investment matured. A relative gifted her a sum. The pathway cleared because she had cleared her consciousness first. Now, you might be thinking, but what if I've been struggling for so long? What if I've tried everything and nothing has worked? My dear friend, this is precisely when the principle becomes most powerful. Your past struggles have nothing to do with your present possibilities. You are not held captive by yesterday's experiences unless you insist on carrying them with you. I knew a man who had failed in business 3 times. 3 times. Each failure had been more devastating than the last. When he came to me, he was convinced he was simply not meant to succeed. He had created an entire identity around his failures. He introduced himself with his defeats. "I'm the fellow who can't seem to make anything work," he would say, almost proudly, as if failure were his profession. I said to him, "You have been faithful to failure. You have been absolutely devoted to it. You speak of it constantly, you think of it always, you expect it fully, and so it comes. Now, let us be as faithful to success." We began with his words. Every time he started to speak of past failures, he stopped himself. This was not easy. The habit was deeply ingrained. But he persisted. Instead, he began to say, "My supply comes from God, and God's supply is inexhaustible. I am now guided to my right place, doing my right work, with my right compensation." He said these words perhaps 50 times a day. At first, they felt hollow to him. He felt like a liar speaking them. But I told him, "You are not lying. You are finally telling the truth. The lie was what you were speaking before, that you were a failure. That was never true. It was only your belief, crystallized into form." Within 6 months, an opportunity came to him that seemed almost miraculous. A former colleague reached out with a business proposition. But here's what was remarkable. This same colleague had reached out 2 years prior with a different opportunity, and my friend had sabotaged it through doubt and fear. This time, he was ready. His consciousness had changed, and therefore his response changed. The business flourished because he no longer carried the vibration of failure. He expected success, and success responded to his expectation. This is what I mean when I say that your mental equivalent determines your experience. You cannot attract what you are not prepared to receive in consciousness. Now I want you to understand something profound about the nature of demonstration. When you truly grasp your mental equivalent, you stop struggling and start allowing. You stop pushing against closed doors and start recognizing the doors that are already open to you. I once knew a woman who was desperately trying to become a successful artist. She took class after class. She networked endlessly. She forced herself to paint in styles that were popular but didn't resonate with her soul. And nothing happened. No success came. She was exhausted, bitter, and ready to give up. One day she said to me, "I don't understand. I've done everything right. Why isn't it working?" I looked at her and asked, "Are you painting what you love or what you think will sell?" She was silent. Then she admitted, "I've been painting what I think people want to buy. I haven't painted what's actually in my heart for years." You see, she had no mental equivalent for success because she had abandoned her authentic self. She was trying to demonstrate something that had no reality in her consciousness. She was mimicking success rather than embodying it. I told her, "Go home. Paint what you love. Paint as if you've already succeeded and the money doesn't matter. Paint from the consciousness of an artist who is already established and free." She did exactly that. Within 6 months, her authentic work caught the attention of a gallery owner who said, "This is what I've been looking for. This has soul." Her career transformed completely, not because she tried harder, but because she aligned her outer actions with her inner truth. This is the secret so many miss. You cannot demonstrate what you are not being. You cannot attract wealth while maintaining the consciousness of poverty. You cannot attract love while holding the consciousness of unworthiness. You cannot attract health while dwelling in the consciousness of disease. Your mental equivalent must shift first. The outer world is always effect, never cause. You are the cause. Your consciousness is the cause. And here's what makes this so liberating. You don't have to change the whole world. You only have to change yourself. You don't have to convince anyone else. You only have to convince your own subconscious mind of the reality you wish to experience. When you change your mental equivalent, everything around you reorganizes itself to match. I've seen this principle work in ways that seem almost miraculous to the rational mind. A woman came to me who had been trying to sell her house for 2 years. She'd lowered the price 3 times, hired different agents, staged the rooms beautifully, nothing worked. I asked her one question. "What do you say to yourself when you walk through that house?" She paused, then admitted, "I think about how no one wants it. I imagine buyers finding all the flaws. I rehearse the rejection." There was her mental equivalent. She wasn't selling a house, she was selling rejection. Every time she imagined another failed showing, she was impressing that pattern deeper into her subconscious mind. I told her to change her inner conversation completely. Walk through that house and speak to it as if the perfect buyer already existed. Thank the universe for the sale that is already accomplished in the invisible realm. See the sold sign. Feel the relief and joy of completion. She resisted at first. "But that feels like lying to myself," she said. I explained. "You're already lying to yourself. You're lying when you say no one wants it, because somewhere, right now, your perfect buyer exists. You're lying when you imagine failure, because the universe doesn't know failure, it only knows the patterns you give it. So you might as well lie in the direction of what you actually want." 3 weeks later, she called me in tears. A buyer had appeared seemingly out of nowhere, someone who'd been transferred to the area suddenly, needed exactly that type of house, and paid her full asking price. Magic? No. Mathematics. She changed her mental equivalent, and reality reorganized itself to match. This is why I tell you, your inner conversations are everything, not your affirmations that you speak for 5 minutes in the morning. Your inner conversations, the running commentary you maintain with yourself all day long. Most people affirm for 5 minutes, then worry for 5 hours. They speak their desire once, then speak their doubt 1,000 times. And they wonder why the doubt wins. Your subconscious mind doesn't care which voice is louder. It only cares which voice is more consistent, more persistent, more saturated with feeling. Worry spoken softly but repeatedly will always overpower desire spoken loudly but briefly. This is why the anxious mother manifests exactly what she fears for her child, not because she spoke her fear aloud, but because she rehearsed it silently 1,000 times. She pictured the accident, felt the dread, lived the loss in her imagination while serving breakfast, folding laundry, driving to school. Her love was louder, but her fear was more consistent. And consistency is the language of creation. I knew a man who wanted wealth, but spent every idle moment calculating how long his savings would last. He said affirmations for 5 minutes each morning. He worried for 16 hours each day. Then he wondered why prosperity eluded him. You cannot spend 59 minutes rehearsing poverty and 1 minute declaring wealth, then expect the universe to reward the minority voice. The subconscious is democratic only in this sense. It counts votes. Each thought is a vote. Each feeling is a vote cast with greater weight. Each imagined scene is 10 votes. And the majority always wins, regardless of volume or intention. This is why thinking positive fails so spectacularly for most people. They layer optimism over a foundation of habitual fear. They wallpaper over rot. They smile while clenching their stomach in knots of anxiety. And they wonder why their words feel hollow, why their affirmations bounce off the ceiling like tennis balls, never quite landing in the soil of reality. The remedy is not louder affirmations. It is consistent feeling. You must withdraw attention from the fear thought the moment it appears. Not suppress it that only feeds its power. Not fight it that acknowledges its validity. Simply withdraw interest as you would from a street performer whose act bores you. Then, redirect. Immediately. Deliberately. With as much feeling as you can summon. This is not pretending. This is training. You are retraining the habitual direction of your emotional energy. When the old worry groove beckons, you consciously choose a different path until the new path becomes the default. I have seen this transform lives with stunning speed. A woman came to me drowning in debt. Every thought was a calculation of lack. I told her to catch each worry thought and immediately replace it with a specific scene, herself opening an envelope containing an unexpected check. Every morning, before fear could tell its lies, she practiced this scene. She felt the weight of the envelope. She saw the numbers written boldly across the check. She felt the relief flooding through her body like warm light. Within 3 weeks, her aunt passed away, an aunt she barely knew existed, leaving her precisely the amount she had been visualizing. The universe doesn't always deliver through the channels we expect. It creates its own pathways when we dare to imagine beyond our current circumstances. But here's what most people miss about imagination. It's not just about visualizing outcomes. It's about becoming the person who naturally experiences those outcomes. When you imagine yourself confident, you must feel the confidence in your spine, your shoulders, your gaze. When you imagine abundance, you must cultivate the generosity of someone who has never known lack. I remember a young artist who came to me frustrated that his work wasn't selling. He spent his days imagining fame and recognition, but his imagination was hollow, all surface, no substance. I asked him a simple question. When you imagine success, what are you wearing? How do you carry yourself? What does the air smell like in your studio? He stared at me, confused. He had been imagining an abstract concept called success, without ever clothing it in the sensory details that make imagination real. Success without details is just wishful thinking. True imagination engages every sense until the mind cannot distinguish between what is vividly imagined and what is physically present. I taught him to imagine specific scenes, unpacking canvases in a prestigious gallery, the director's handshake firm and enthusiastic, hearing the quiet murmur of collectors discussing his work, feeling the texture of his finest suit jacket as he stands proudly at his opening reception, tasting the champagne that celebrates his first major sale. 3 months later, every single scene had manifested not metaphorically, but literally. The gallery, the handshake, the collectors, the champagne, all of it. Because he had rehearsed it so thoroughly in imagination that reality had no choice but to conform. And here's where most people stumble. They imagine once, get excited, then immediately check physical reality to see if it's working. They plant the seed, then dig it up every few hours to see if it's sprouting. That's not faith. That's anxiety masquerading as manifestation. You must give your mental images time to harden into form. You must persist in your assumption even when the three-dimensional world hasn't caught up yet. Because there's always a gestation period. Always. The apple doesn't appear the moment you plant the seed. First, there's invisible growth beneath the soil, roots establishing, structure forming. Your desires are building themselves in the unseen before they reveal themselves in the seen. I know a woman who decided she was going to write a best-selling book. She had never published anything, didn't have an agent, didn't even have the book finished. But every single day, she sat in meditation and felt what it would feel like to see her book in airport bookstores. She imagined walking past Hudson News and seeing her face on the cover. She felt the weight of the book in her hands. She rehearsed signing copies for readers. Her friends thought she was delusional. "You don't even have a publisher," they'd say. She'd smile and reply, "Not yet in this dimension." 6 months later, she finished the manuscript. An agent reached out to her after seeing an essay she'd written. Within a year, the book was on shelves. 2 years after that, it hit the New York Times list. Was it luck? Talent? Timing? No. It was assumption hardened into fact. She never wavered. She never hedged. She never said, "Well, I hope it works out." She lived from the end. And the universe, which is nothing but solidified imagination, had no choice but to rearrange itself to match her inner conviction. This is the part where I need you to be brutally honest with yourself. Are you imagining from desire or from fulfillment? Because there's a universe of difference between the two. When you imagine from desire, there's a feeling of lack attached to it. You're looking at what you want, like a hungry person staring through a restaurant window. There's longing there. There's a sense that it's times over their times, and your times over here, asterisk. That gap between you and your desire is what keeps it perpetually out of reach. But when you imagine from fulfillment, the entire energy shifts. You're not reaching for something outside yourself. You're feeling it as already accomplished, already done, already yours. It's the difference between saying, "I want to be financially free," and knowing, deep in your bones, "I am financially free." Now, here's where people trip up. They think imagining from fulfillment means pretending. They think it's about lying to themselves, putting on a false face while their bank account screams otherwise. But that's not it at all. Imagining from fulfillment is about occupying the state of the wish fulfilled, even if just for a moment. It's about giving yourself permission to feel what it would feel like if it were already done. Let me give you something practical. When you go to imagine your desire tonight, notice the feeling. If there's any sense of, "I hope this works," you're imagining from desire. If there's any anxiety about when it will show up, you're imagining from desire. If you feel relief when you imagine it, as though something has finally been solved, you're still operating from the problem. But when you imagine from fulfillment, there's a quiet knowing. There's peace. There's a sense of course. It's natural. It's easy. There's no strain because you're not trying to get anything. You already have it in consciousness, and consciousness is the only reality that matters. The world you see around you is simply the outpicturing of your consciousness. Change your consciousness, and your world must follow. This isn't magic, this is law. As within, so without. As above, so below. Every thought you think is a seed planted in the invisible, and the invisible always mirrors back to you exactly what you have planted. This is why I tell you, watch your words as you would watch precious jewels. They are creating your tomorrow even as you speak them today. When you say, "I can't afford this," you are setting in motion the energy of lack. When you say, "This always happens to me," you are claiming that negative pattern as your own. But when you decree, "God's wealth is my wealth, and I now receive my good," you align yourself with the infinite supply that is your divine birthright. I have watched miracles unfold in the lives of those who dared to speak as if the thing they desired were already accomplished. A woman once came to me drowning in debt, telling me of bills she could not pay, obligations she could not meet. I said to her, "Speak the word of abundance. Give thanks for your wealth even before you see it." She thought I was mad, but she was desperate, and desperation sometimes opens the door that pride keeps closed. She began to affirm, "I give thanks for God's abundant supply. All my needs are met now and forever." Within 3 weeks, money came to her from directions she had never anticipated. An old debt was repaid that she had long forgotten. An opportunity appeared that brought unexpected income. The invisible had rearranged itself to match her new inner conviction. You see, the universe does not respond to your need, it responds to your faith. It does not hear your begging, it hears your believing. When you beg, you affirm that you do not have. When you believe, you affirm that it is already yours, simply making its way into visible form. This is the secret the ages have tried to conceal from you, but I declare it plainly. You are the creator of your experience. Not through effort, not through struggle, but through consciousness. Change your consciousness, and you change your world. It is truly that simple, though simple does not always mean easy. The old thoughts will fight for their life. They will come rushing back, these thought forms of fear and limitation you have fed for so many years. They will say, "Who do you think you are? This won't work for you. You're different. You're not worthy." These are the death throes of the old consciousness, and you must stand firm. Speak your word and let it be established. Do not waver, do not compromise. The entire universe is listening.